All right, so good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. I am Darlisa Adams, founder of Visions of Women nonprofit organization, where we are educating, supporting, and leading to raise awareness towards domestic violence and promote healthy relationships. Today, I am going to introduce our speakers for today. We have Joanne Brown, and just some information about her first. And next, I will introduce Joshua Williamson. Joanne M. Brown has been working as a middle school counselor in Richland 1 since 2001. She is a graduate of Morris College and South Carolina State University, where she earned a BS in Business Administration and a MED in Elementary and Secondary School Counseling. She loves being a school counselor and enjoy interactions with students, staff, and parents. Her responsibilities include conducting individual counseling, running social skills groups, teaching classroom guidance lessons, and dealing with various situations that arise throughout the school day. She believes every student is unique, and her personal mission is to help each student reach his or her maximum potential. In her free time, she enjoys spending time with family, reading, and traveling. And then next, I'm going to introduce Joshua Williamson. He is a native of Marion, South Carolina. He earned his bachelor's and master's degree in criminal justice from Claflin University. During undergrad, Joshua assisted for the Orangeburg, South Carolina Sheriff's Office as a victim witness, where he gained experience advocating for those who have been victims of crime. Joshua has served as a victim advocate for probation, parole, and pardon services and Charleston Police Department. He currently serves as a victim witness for the Commonwealth of Virginia Attorney's Office. Joshua is an ambassador for the community and has a passion for change. Welcome, Joanne and Joshua.
Hi.
Thank you.
Yes, so I just want to take this moment. Thank you all for being here today so we can talk about teen dating violence and promote healthy relationships. As you all know, this month is Teen Dating Violence Awareness Month and is actually a national month for us to continue to educate on teen dating violence, what that looks like, and to also promote healthy relationships. But I do want to know just a bit about how have you both been doing during this pandemic, and what are you doing for self-care? Who would like to share first?
I'll share, it's fine. Um, when I leave work, usually I come home and just try to meditate for the first hour. I don't answer my phone from anyone. I call my mom on the way home. And usually I get me a cup of coffee.
Mhm.
And I try my very best to get 10,000 steps a day.
Yes.
I have my Fitbit on my arm, and sometimes I'm just so focused on it. The school nurse is like, why you look at that thing every day? I'm
Right.
trying to hold myself accountable.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I make it most days, Monday through Friday, but basically that's all I've been doing, taking care of an 80-year-old mother. She doesn't live with me, but I spend a lot of time with her, checking on her, making sure her needs are met. And I have a new great niece that I love dearly. I'm going to babysit her after this. So I spend a lot of time with my family, not friends as much now because of the pandemic, but I had a lot of time now to catch up on some reading because of the pandemic. You know, you're
Okay.
not going as much now because of the pandemic. So
Right.
it's been all good though. It's been all good.
Excellent. And I love the 10,000 steps a day, which is something I'm
Trying.
still
I'm
working
trying.
towards.
I'm trying. I'm trying. I'm trying.
That's good. And we are glad, you are taking care of yourself and your mother. And so, what about you, Joshua?
For me, it's been quite busy because I am still advocating for people who become victims of a crime. I'm typically in church and I'm typically at the courthouse every day. Between those two, I try to balance it but most of my day I am at court. I'm in court Monday through Friday. I'm assisting victims here in the community of Hampton, Virginia. So it's quite busy due to COVID. Things have changed. Yes, it has caused me to. Of course, everyone has to wear masks and everyone has to social distance. However, the court is not closed. People are still coming to crime. Services still have to be provided. So here in Hampton, that is what my daily duties are, is to assist the community here. Things have not caused me to be able to not do the things that I want to. However, I'm still assisting victims due to COVID. And I think for me, what makes me feel more self-care will be listening to music. I love Luther Vandross. I will say, Joanne, our generation, most of our generation don't know about that type of music, but I'm one of the ones that love Luther Vandross, especially one of his songs, "Are You There?" I love that song, and "Wait for Love." So I'm listening to music, I'm meditating, and just relaxing on my free time as my self-care.
Awesome. And music is definitely a good way to just de-stress. Put your favorite song on. So again, thank you all, and thanks for sharing how you are doing during this pandemic and sharing your self-care with us all. So I do want to ask you some questions, Joanne, just about healthy relationships. And we're going to jump into this topic because again, teen dating violence, as much as we talk about what abuse looks like, we want to know, what does a healthy relationship look like? So if you can, I just have some questions here I'm going to ask you.
Okay.
So that's going to be the first question. What does a healthy relationship look like?
A healthy relationship, it involves honesty, trust, and communication between two people. And in the honesty and the respect and the communication, it takes effort and compromise for those two people who are involved in a relationship. Both parties should be equal in this.
Right. Exactly. And so in those relationships, what are some different characteristics you may see?
For a healthy relationship, I really think the first one is respect. You have to have respect for each other. You have to allow each other their space, their privacy. Another one is just making sure that you feel comfortable in the state that you're in that relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And you're also able to express your opinions in the relationship. Because there are going to be things that, of course, you two people are different, but you have to compromise in those situations when they arise, because disagreement will arise, but you have to compromise in those situations.
Okay. So in those relationships, what would the characteristics of a unhealthy relationship look like? Because I think sometimes that's the difficult part, is actually understanding what that would look like in a relationship.
I would say the first one is disrespect. Sometimes when people are in relationships, it's almost like they think they own the other person. So they try to just do things that are not ordinary in a relationship. Again, just disrespecting that person, not valuing who that person is and what that person is about. And another one is hostility. I've seen that a lot. People being hostile and taking things out that are happening in your life on other people.
Right.
You have to be able to, going back to communication, you have to be able to communicate and talk about the things in the relationship. Because these things may arise, because sometimes when we are going through things, we don't know how to deal with it. So we may become hostile. Another one is, I've seen dishonesty. The best part of a relationship is being transparent to each other, just telling the truth. And sometimes people have a hard time for whatever reason. But I think as you build your relationship, you have to be honest with each other. Disrespect, dishonesty has nowhere in a relationship, and it can destroy a relationship. And I say the last one is like physical violence. That's a no, physical violence. No one owns each other. Right. We don't belong to each other, and we don't own each other. So when that comes in the relationship, you definitely have to find your way out of the relationship. And sometimes people stay in it because they have the fear of leaving, but they have to find the way out of the relationship if it becomes physical or abusive.
Right. That's good. And I like what you said there, explaining being transparent, because definitely in relationships, being clear and using that communication is key. So can you tell us what are some foundations of a healthy relationship?
Having boundaries. Because sometimes I think people don't understand that the other person that's in the relationship, that they have different ways of doing things, just like you have different ways of doing things. But you have to find ways to meet each other's. But there are always going to be boundaries. You have to put your needs, even if you have to put your needs before the other person, that's fine, as long as that you are comfortable in the relationship, because sometimes that will happen as well.
Right, exactly. And so why do you think healthy relationships are important?
Oh, that's a big one. As human beings, relationships that we form, whether they're with our colleagues, our co-workers, our children, our spouses, it's all important because of our mental health, as well as our physical health and our emotional health. Because if you don't have healthy relationship, it affects other part of your body. Some people become so stressed, the depression sits in. So it's vital to our life, and to me, it's survival. It's survival.
Exactly. That is so true. And I thank you so much for sharing those key points of a healthy relationship, because a lot of times, some of us, we just don't know what exactly that looks like. And when it comes to teen dating violence, that can look different ways, especially being on media and different things like that, and using technologies. We see different things like, the cyberbullying, or, just different things like that. So we definitely want to continue to just, be mindful of what the healthy relationship aspect of that looks like when it comes to teens. So thank you for sharing, Joanne. It was a pleasure talking about the healthy relationships to this segment. So the next topic we want to get into is actually talking about the teen dating violence. And Joshua, what exactly is teen dating violence?
Lisa, teen violence is typically relating to any type of behavior with the purpose to gain power or control over your spouse. It could be your boyfriend, your girlfriend. Teen dating can also be domestic violence. And a lot of people are not fully aware how domestic violence can show up in a teen's life. But when you think about it, if you're a teenager and you're dating someone, the same thing that you could be going through as a teenager in a violent relationship, an adult could be going through the same thing, and it's considered as domestic violence.
That is so true. So what are some signs of or examples of control, or what control can look like in a relationship?
Typically, when you're in a relationship, some signs of controlling could be that person controlling your mind, controlling your emotions, as much as hurting your body. Now, when you also think about controlling someone, it could be abuse.
Mhm.
Sometimes people go through abuse in a relationship, which is a sign of controlling, and it could be scary. And it can also become a confusion for that person that's in the relationship. And it can be hard for that person to see their partner or believe their actions when it shows up in the relationship. So you have to be able to know these things when it happen, and also some controlling aspects when it comes down to violence in a relationship regarding teens. It could be asking permission to go somewhere or to meet your family or your friends. Some people or the abusing party tend to control a person and not allow them to go out and hang out with their friends. They're constantly calling them and texting them. They're constantly trying to track their every move. They want to know where they're going, who they're with, how long they're going to be. Sometimes they tend to have victims that would be in a relationship tend to have less money, and they're depending on their lover to support them. So whoever that person is or that abusing party, they could be trying to control that person when it comes down to finances, because they're limiting them on how much money they can spend or how much money they give them. They always tend to refer their partner as a jealous type of person, or they always assuming that they're having a different type of affairs. And once again, I know I mentioned this already, but cutting you off from your family members and your friends is a sign of control. If you
Mhm.
don't see that your loved one, the person that you're in a relationship, is causing you or isolating you from your family, if you see those things, it's a red flag, and you should not continue to live with someone or be in a relationship with someone who's trying to control you.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that. So, what could a teen do if they are going through an abusive relationship? What can they do?
Number one thing to do is call the police. Always call the police when you are in a abusive relationship. And also you can notify your family members. You can reach out to your community agencies. Most people are not aware of the support that is out there in the community. For example, victim advocates. I'm a victim advocate myself. I've been advocating for people who become victims of a crime for over 3 years. So I tend to tell young people, and I tell the older generation as well, because not only does this happens in teens, but it happens to young adults, it happens to seniors. Always know that there is help in the community. So if you're in an abusive relationship, not only should you call the police, but you should reach out to your community resources. There are victim advocates that's out there. There are victim advocates that's in law enforcement agencies. There are victim advocates that are in the solicitor's office. There are victim advocates that are in non-profit organizations. And Lisa, you have an organization that reach out to victims. Excuse me. So people in the community can reach out to your organization. The main goal is to always educate victims and let them know that there are services available. So if you ever become a victim, there's people that you can reach out to in your community.
That's awesome. Excellent. So, if a teen has a friend that is getting abused, how can they help them?
One thing you can do is encourage them to call the police. You can never tell the person to not call the police, because resources are available when you call the police. So if you have a friend that is going through a unhealthy relationship, encourage them to call the police, encourage them to reach out to their family members, so that they can notify their family members of the situation that's going on, and be a support to them. Let them know that, hey, I'm your friend, I'm going to be here to support you. If you happen to end up going to court due to this abusive relationship that you've been through, that matriculated to domestic violence, if you need me to be there, I'm going to be there. I'll call you and check up on you, see how you're doing. I'll go to court with you and sit with you to every court proceedings. I'll be there as a support. So as a friend, the best thing to do is to be an emotional supporter for your friend when they're going through a domestic violence situation, or if they're having abuse showing up in their relationships as a team.
Okay, cool. So, we hear a lot about safety planning, and often you don't really hear like a teen could safety plan, if they are going through in a abusive relationship. But how could a young person, create a safety plan, and who can they create their safety plan with if they are going through abuse?
Lisa, a safety plan is put into place in case a victim feel as if their life is in danger
Mhm.
and they're no longer able to live in that household with that person. So when you in an abusive situation and the abuser is controlling you, he or she is manipulating you, isolating you, physically assaulting you, and you know that you're not feeling safe, the number one thing to do is call the police. After you call the police, you can create your own safety plan. Your safety plan could be anything. Your safety plan could be um, taking funds out of one account to put into another account to help you um, run away from your situation. If you need to get a hotel for a night, if you need to get a flight and just go somewhere to be away from it, having finances available to be able to help you in a situation so that you won't have to depend on the abuser. So having finances is a great way of that you can put into your safety plan.
Mhm.
Always call the police. Remember that because that's great for a safety plan. You can also reach out to community resources in your community. They can assist you with a safety plan, such as a victim advocate. As I mentioned before, there are victim advocates all over the world, and their job is to assess victims for safety. So what that looks like, if you're living in fear, they can give you a safety plan, and it could be something. It could be something simple as a code. So, for example, you're in a situation and your abuser is attacking you, and you trying to reach out to your family or your friends or the victim advocate, but you don't want your loved one to know what's going on. So you can create a code, and that code can be a number. It could be 211, just making up a code. And when you make up that code 211, normally your friends or your families or the victim advocate, they know what that code means. That code can mean I need your help. That code can mean call the police. That code can mean come to my rescue. And the abuser would never know what that means. And that could be a code that you set up with your family, your friends, and it can relate for a safety plan. Now, some victims have children, and you could be a teen and you're in a relationship with that abusing party. It could be a girl, or it could be a boy. So you have to have safety plans put in place for you and your child. Even if you're pregnant, you have to have a safety plan put into place. You have to make sure that you're doing things healthy. You're doing things healthy that is beneficial for you and your baby, because you also have to make sure you don't cause too much stress on yourself. You have to make sure you don't cause too much tension that will cause you to have an unhealthy uh, pregnancy as it relates to being in a abusive relationship. So it's always good to have a safety plan, because the safety plans help you cope with your emotions. A safety plan also help you put into place your steps, step A, step B, step C. It helps you put into place what are you going to do when you become in a situation as being a victim of a crime. And then I know you had another question. I think I missed that. If you could give me that second question, that'd be great.
You answered it. You
Okay.
answered everything. Yeah, you answered everything. And then when it comes to even just safety planning, like I would say, you can always have a bag or something packed and ready to go. If there's an emergency and you have to get out of there, have that bag packed. and ready to go already in the car, or like you mentioned, a neighbor, give it to your neighbor to have. You can always give them a spare key, just, different things like that. So Joshua, thank you so much for sharing that. So another thing I want to share, Joshua, is we hear that men do not report abuse as much as women, and the statistics also tell us that. And so here are some stats I want to give you. Nearly 1 in 4 men in the US experience some form of contact sexual violence in their lifetime. 15% of men who were victims of contact sexual violence, physical violence, and or stalking by an intimate partner in their lifetime first experienced these or other forms of violence by that partner before age 18. And as of January 27th, 2020, the CDC has reported that 1 in 9 females and 1 in 36 males, high school students, report having experienced sexual dating violence. So, how can we stop the stigma of men reporting abuse? Or helping men, voice that they are being abused without feeling as though they're going to get labeled for that. How can we start supporting them more on reporting abusive tactics?
That is a great question. And I want to start off by saying there are some reasons behind African Americans, men who do not report abuse, and simply because they are afraid of what would happen to them if they report it. Some men are afraid because of how the media portray law enforcement, and as we all know, how cops are killing African American men. We know that, and we see that in the community. And sometimes men are very, very afraid of a situation like that happening to them because they report to law enforcement. And that could be one of the reasons why they don't report. And I think in that situation, it means that there is a disconnect in the community as it relates to law enforcement and the community. There's a disconnect because we trust law enforcement to be there to assist us when these crimes happen, because most of the time we don't know what to do. And sometimes we don't know who to call. We don't know the resources, even when there is resources available for that person. So in that situation, victim advocates are put in place to help build the gap between law enforcement and the community. So if a male is afraid to report a crime, you can call the non-emergency number and ask to speak to a victim advocate, and they can encourage you to call the police, and they can come to your home and also assist you right then and there, because like I said, some people are afraid to report it because of what's in the media. So educating yourself, you can also, most law enforcement agencies have a community organization where they go out and educate the community. You can go to law enforcement agencies and ask questions. You can meet the law enforcement officers there. You can be more familiar with the officers in your community. Despite what you've seen in the media, you can go out, make it your business to speak to the people that's in the law enforcement, so you can have that connection with them, so you won't have to feel afraid to report a crime. If you start now and make the connection with law enforcement in your area, you won't have a problem when it comes down to being afraid to report the crime. And I will say, it's important to call the police. And the reason why is because it increased your personality and it increased your personal safety when you call the police. And when you also call the police, it connects you, it gives you the option to be able to connect with local community agencies. It also leads police officers to help you prevent those things from happening again whenever you call them. Law enforcement are there to assist you and provide support to you. They're also able to help you with a financial assistance plan that you may need. And also it could be an insurance plan as it relates to like a stolen property or damages that may happen to your home. If you report these things, you'll be amazed of the services and the assistance that you can get just by reporting it. So I always encourage men, always report it to the police, because if you do, you'll be amazed of how much service that you can receive from law enforcement when you report it. You don't have to worry about what you've been through or what you see in the community. Trust victim advocates to be able to help build the gap between law enforcement and the community.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for sharing those points. So, can you share with us how can men or teen males start voicing that they have been abused? Because they may be scared to, share that with others. But how can they start, just maybe taking those steps to actually voice so men can understand that abuse does happen to men and this is what it can look like?
I would say with high schoolers, you can start in your high school. You can speak with your teachers, maybe try starting a club or a group regarding to teen violence, and encourage young men to speak to other young men in high school about what they experience as they been in a abusive relationship with the female. Um, and if you start there, it'll help you to be able to um, know what to expect or what to prevent whenever you maybe experience it again as an adult. Because if you experience teen violence at a young age, when you become an adult, it's likely to also experience that again. And most people are not aware of that. They're not aware of the services, and there are services available. So I would encourage people to start some type of club, start your own group, talk to other young men, reach out to other people in the community, other young men that experience what you've been through, and just talk to them. Let them know your experience. Let them know what you did. Let them know who you reached out to, because that could help them to encourage or educate the next young man who going through the same thing that you went through.
Exactly. I agree with that. And so I want to ask both of you this question. And Joshua, you kind of, shared a little bit and touched on this question. But, how can we empower our communities? Because we know that teen dating violence is going on. We know that domestic violence is going on. So how can we empower our communities and, continue to decrease domestic violence or start working on decreasing teen dating violence in our community?
I would say, and how we can empower our community is when you see different organizations have events in the community that's relating to violence, go. If your law enforcement is having a victim's right celebration or a candle lighting or any type of activity in the community that reflects around violence, go to it, because you can learn so much about it. You can learn so much about domestic violence. You can learn so much about what to do in this situation, who to call. You can learn about safety plans. You can learn about prevention. You can learn about how to maneuver your way through the criminal justice process of your case whenever you have to go to court. So the most important thing is to go to events that are out there in your community. When someone is throwing a not when some nonprofit organization is throwing a movement or an empowerment to educate the community, go to it, because you can learn so much, and you can also start your own program or your own project that can encourage the community to always call the police. You can educate the community on what you've been through and what you can do to make your situation better. As prevention, you can discuss that. So the number one thing is to make yourself available to the activities in your community, because when you do, you do yourself a great honor when you learn more and you educate yourself about the situations that people go through in their daily lives as it relates to teen violence.
Awesome. Thanks so much for sharing that. Uh, Miss Joanne,
Yes.
so how can we continue to, support our community and educate and empower our community?
Lisa, first of all, I think um, by supporting or empowering our community, sometimes we have to volunteer.
Yeah.
We have to make some sacrifices. It's always sometimes we're not comfortable about doing something that we are not used to doing, but it's a good thing to volunteer at those different organizations. Also, I think our churches need to be more involved in listening to people, because when you're communicating with people in the community, usually you can pick up on things. And everybody needs a listening ear. Sometimes you can direct that person to other resources. But I think the biggest one for me is just finding some way to volunteer. Find an organization to volunteer with. And then you could even bring that to your church. You could bring it to your school. You can share it with your family members and your friends.
I love
Your voice is very powerful. Your voice is very powerful.
that. Is so true, because even though, myself, I run Visions of Women, but I still reach out to others to volunteer. Like, that is so important. So let's continue to, come together and amplify our voices, because there is so much to educate on, especially when it comes to topics such as these, like teen dating violence and promoting healthy relationships, so we can, put those prevention tools out there and continue to decrease domestic violence in our community and empower our community for the better. So I want to thank Joanne Brown, Miss Joanne Brown,
Thank
and
you.
Mr. Joshua Williamson for being with us today to educate us. And everything that you all have said today has definitely educated our community on teen dating violence awareness, prevention, and healthy relationships. So everyone, thanks for joining us. This will be posted. We will be sharing this on our resource webpage, which is www.visionsofwomen.org. So continue to keep up with our news and events. We have more events coming your way to talk about teen dating violence with the Richland County Library, and we are excited about doing that. So thank you for joining us, and we will see you all again soon. Peace and blessings.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.